Hi, Nicholas. How was everything?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, nice to come on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for coming. This is an honor to have you.
I've come all the way from the UK to Sweden today.
Welcome to Sweden. No lockdown here.
I know. What? Geez, I should come actually. If the planes would allow me, I'd be over there. I'll hijack a plane.
Hijack a plane, yeah. So tell people who you are. I know who you are, but who is Nicholas?
Cool. Well, yeah, I could say it's a long story, so I'll try and keep it short. I guess I started in property in around about 2000 when I left university. I took out a ton of student debt in order to buy my first property. I took two personal loans out, one graduate loan, one personal loan, about 25 grand's worth of unsecured personal debt. That was my deposit for my first house. A couple of years after that, I was investing in other properties, and in that house, I actually rented out the rooms whilst I was living there to help me fund the mortgage and the bills. So by the time of renting out sort of over the course of about a year or two, 3 of the 4 rooms, I was rent and bill free very early on. I was like, well, passive income works. I understood property management early on. Unbeknown to me, I'd actually created my first HMO, back in 2000, 2001, that would sort of turn into one of my first HMOs. I was still kind of working in the city at the time. So I worked for some of the big banks. I worked for Lehman Brothers. It was an investment bank that's now went bust in 2008, unfortunately. I always joke about that one, saying they couldn't cope without me because I actually left in 2007 to go 2006, 2007 to go full-time property. Before then, I'd been investing. I had property businesses and bits and bobs before that, but I was kind of investing part-time, I guess, if you will. So, I built a certain size of portfolio by the time I was going live full-time. And that was how I built up. And I'd always advise people getting into property to do that because, you need your day job, bit of income coming in as you build your portfolio and your knowledge and your expertise. So yeah, I think going on till more shift forward to the current day, I own and operate propertyforum.com. You can see the banners flying up here. That's one of the largest international property chat forums and news portals in the world. We have a huge number of people going on there who we help with lots of free education, lots of useful tips. We've got loads of ebooks on certain different topics. So it's great for people if you want to get into property, jump on there, join the conversations, ask any questions you need. I'm regularly on there helping people out and chatting. Our other main business is Red Brick. That's our property development arm. That's where I've been, say, full-time property developing for 13, 14 years and more investing before that. So that we do HMO conversions, we do office to residential conversions, other commercial to residential conversions. We've done care homes back to flats. We've done lots of offices. We did an apart hotel deal once. So quite a mix of, the bigger commercial conversions. I also mentor people in property now. So having built up all that expertise and knowledge, wanted to share it further. So, once people have got to a certain level of education, maybe they've done a course, maybe they've read up online, read all our ebooks and forums and, feel they've kind of got a level of knowledge, but want to go, accelerate their journey really, really fast. That's when I work on a kind of one-to-one mentorship basis with people. You can jump on my website at nicholaswallwork.com to see links to those kind of packages offer. And that's working direct with me and a couple of my power team. So that can get people going in property a lot quicker. As you know, Nana, one of my books that I did last year, released Investing in International Real Estate for Dummies for the famous For Dummies brand. You've got Excel for Dummies, Marketing for Dummies. Now you've got Investing in International Real Estate for Dummies. By
Great book.
Truly, that was just a distillation of 20 years of knowledge, and in there, it's a huge book. If you can see the size of it, it's not a little flimsy self-published paperback. This is a serious body of work. It covers rent-to-rent strategies. It covers JVs, taking private finance. It covers HMOs, service accommodation, holiday lets, you name it. There's like a good solid chapter introducing you to all of the major property investment strategies. So for anyone looking to get into property, further their knowledge, start there. It costs, I don't know, 15 quid or something on Amazon. Jump on Amazon. It's as good as free in terms of, spending thousands of pounds on a course. Start with something like that and, you'll get right into property investing. off the back of that, I told you it wasn't short, Nana. I did warn you. You said, well, who are you, Nicholas? I said, well, you know, have you got an hour and a half? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I will shut up in a minute. They made me write Brexit for Dummies for my sins. They said, you did such a blooming good job on your property book. Will you write Brexit for Dummies? So I'm globally released book across the world. I'm apparently known as, well, no, I'm putting myself down. It's not fair. I'm known as an industry business expert, you know, based off a lot of the property businesses and marketing stuff that we've done. So marketing businesses and stuff. So yeah, really excited to be here today and yeah, hopefully share some of that knowledge. Happy to brain picked.
You will, you will. And the first book, International Real Estate for Dummies, that one, I have it. And I even have put it in my YouTube, on our YouTube channel about it. I think it's one of the 10 books that I recommend people to read.
Fantastic.
So,
thank you. I appreciate it.
I've already done some marketing for you before you came on.
Send you some referral fees, won't I, or something? Unfortunately, 15 quid a book, not very high referral fees. But no, it's all about giving away. You know, for me, it's all about my ethics have come for a lot of years. I've seen other investors lose money on the deals they do, making big mistakes, buying hugely expensive courses from the wrong people and getting sold what you can buy in a 15 quid book for several £1,000s. That's not to say, you know, we've had discussions on this earlier today before our call here. You know, there are good operators out there, you know, and I'm hoping to launch a global course this year with one of the best operators in the industry. And we're really making sure that those courses are going to be, you know, terms and conditions are clear and easy to understand. There are good and clear refund policies. You're not being, you know, pushed and pressure sold to. And that's really important to me. You know, the education industry has a bit of a bad name in property, as it does with any sort of wealth creation industry or stocks and shares or crypto. You know, it can attract the wrong kind of people who want to make a quick buck selling courses when they don't have a lot of track record. So, you know, what I say to people is make sure that, you know, whatever you do in property, pick the best people to work with, the best people to mentor with, people that have got a genuine track record, look them up, do the due diligence, ask what they own. I would show anyone that wants to see my asset and liability sheet. That's all the properties we own in our personal names, in our limited companies, in our LLPs, in our structure. I would show every single property we own. Absolute textbook, open book, if people want to see it and maybe want to work with me. So check out who you want to work with in property is a kind of key message, I would say.
Yeah, you hear that? Listen, that's a message from Nicholas, who's a big developer. So, and he's open as a book. And I think, like you're saying, people should just be open, because if you don't have anything to hide, so why
would you not answer any question about your business? Like literally any question.
Exactly.
You can't answer every and any question. You've got something to hide, I assume. So. That's a pretty simple piece of layman's advice for any business relationship you're looking to get into, I guess. Yeah.
So now I'm going to jump into the question, because I can speak with you like how long, I don't know, because we can speak about everything about property.
Yeah, we'll probably speak today if we wanted to. I'm very passionate about property like yourself, and yeah, we could probably go on a bit too long, but let's try and be concise for your lovely viewers. And give some valuable content.
So yeah, exactly. So I'm basically going to ask you a lot of HMO questions, because the from our community, people have sent in emails and etc. about HMO. So I really wanted to have someone who's really good on it. Cool. So I thought that's why I pinged you, and now you're here. So I'm going to ask you, student HMO, social housing, or professional? Can you explain the difference as well when you're doing it on HMO?
Yeah, really good question, actually, because I think what's important to understand is when you you choose your end strategy. Pull me back in if I go off on tangents, by the way, because I do just go off on tangents. But yeah, every strategy has a sub strategy effectively. You think, oh, an HMO. Well, an HMO, I develop HMOs. All right, fine. So you build buildings with lots of rooms in with lockable doors and shared facilities. but who you're renting to. You know, you've picked up on the three main HMO strategies, I guess, the sub-strategies, and those are all wildly different in many respects. I'm not a student investor. I've never rented to students other than the odd PhD student that drops in through the door that we would let to. We normally let to professional tenants. And more recently, we've started working with councils doing some social lets, which I believe are going to be a big booming area, not least because of the pandemic, COVID-19. So there will be more people that have unfortunately lost their jobs, lost their homes in the last year, who need good quality housing, who are just going through some tough times. I think there's a big stigma attached to social housing, that council housing, we don't want these riffraff in our lovely rental properties. Well, I think that's really an outdated and not the right view to take in this modern world. And I think actually some of that tenant demographic, there's always a small minority that ruin things for people. It's the football hooligans, the 10 football hooligans in a football ground. They're the ones that ruin it for the whole of football, right? As an example, English football hooligans, that's the thing, isn't it? But actually, it's probably only about 20 or 30 people in the world that cause the disruption and give the whole sport a bad name. And that's terrible. Yeah. So it's kind of the same with social housing, in my view. There'll be a handful of tenants that create a bad name. And the same in the student market. Handful of bad students, students trash your place, they don't go with the student market. I'm sure it's not like that. It's not like that, but you have to be a little bit more on your toes with those two groups, for example, because there will potentially be a bit more wear and tear, not quite as higher sort of quality of tenant, if that's the right phrase, without being too unfair to other groups. So with that in mind, social tenants would be people that have got some form of benefits or housing allowance from the council. The council would usually maybe either assist with that property, finding that property for them, and they would introduce you to them. So for example, we're working on one of our sites recently with one of the local authorities here, and they have a procurement officer who's come from the private rented sector, from lettings and management. So he's very proactive in terms of knowing what landlords are worried about and what they are looking for in a tenant. So he's actually putting tenants with us, and he's putting kind of the better tenants with us that he thinks will be good as gold in a sort of a professional type of property. So the market's moving on. The councils are getting wind of the fact that if they can manage their processes better, vet their tenants properly, they're fully, viable tenants that pay good, solid market rent. Basically, the rents seem to be being quite strong at the moment in this area. Yeah. So and I guess kind of flipping back over to the student market, that's a market that I don't do, and the reason I don't do it is that it is a bit cyclical. I think it's quite market dependent. So the pandemic's really night and day. We've rented to professionals and kept upwards of 95% occupancy.
Wow.
Figures, it varies month on month, but we've never dipped below 90%, and that might have been the first couple of months of a really strong lockdown where there was some natural turnover of people that had handed their notice in 2 months previous, and we couldn't fill them because of the lockdown. Then things eased up, people got used to it, property was allowed to be open again, and officially we were still allowed to operate, and then our occupancy jumped right back up, and we've maintained a solid occupancy.
Well done.
Thank you. No, it was very worrying. I mean, don't get me wrong. March, April last year was extremely worrying times with over 200 plus tenants. Was anyone going to pay? Was anyone going to pay the rent?
Wow.
And that we might be successful developers, but we're also bigger. And although we have SPVs, lots of properties all dotted around, if no one paid their rent, you've got zero income coming in. I think our rent roll is comfortably over it's massively over £1 million a year, much higher than £1 million.
Oh, wow.
I have to double check what it is, actually. I don't know that figure off the top of my head.
You will be forced to sell your house, Nicholas, if they...
I'll be forced to sell my house, my children, my wife. Everything would have to go, Nana. I'd have to sell this shirt. But, we'd last a few months, but, you'd only last for so long. So, March, April was a really tough time. So that passed, which was great. But for me, going back to students, was that can be cyclical. That was night and day. There was no people renting student. So if I was I had 200 odd student lets, I'd be in the proverbial dog's poop. You know, so that wouldn't have been good. Now, I think what a lot of those student landlords have done is obviously rent to other demographics. They've probably turned to the professional markets or the social markets to get some level of renting, and they've had to learn very quickly to change their business to those models.
Yeah.
Now, what I've done over the years, I've built all of our buildings to the highest spec of the three, and that would be the advice if you can afford to do that, because then you can turn to any one of those three strategies. You know, so the spec is much higher than a lot of HMOs I see around, and that gives us a market advantage for a number of reasons. Assuming no one takes this advice, obviously, we'll still remain at the top of our game. So just can you delete that? Can you cut that bit out, man? No, of course not. Look, there's a lot of business out there. There's more than enough housing to cope with the demand. People talk about oversaturation of HMOs. That can be the case in some areas. So look area specific, but overall, people need somewhere to live. If people are still renting, there's still a demand, and there's plenty of fish in the sea for lots of investors to get involved in HMOs. It's absolutely a cracking market still, because it's an affordable price point for young professionals, students and social alike. So we spec them up to the highest possible level so that we can turn to any demographic we want. It might be overspec for social, might be overspec for students, but you know what? You'll get the best rent you can from those markets. Yeah. And actually having multiple exit options, being exit-led, multiple exit options is vital as an investor.
I have a following question regarding the social housing. Do you see in the market as well that the lenders are being more open now with social housing? Because there always been that they're very, what I've been told, that they're very not so hands-on that, because they don't want to throw out a social housing if they will be forced to repossess the property.
Yeah, I think they're definitely coming around to the idea more than they used to. A number of lenders still are concerned about their reputational risk. They're worried about the reputational risk of dealing with certain demographics. We rent a couple of our buildings to a big operator in England that does the asylum seeker market. So we actually have a small hand in that market now, which we feel is a market that needs satisfying, and that there are people there in need that don't want to be there. They're escaping war and this kind of stuff. They're good people. They're good, honest people, and they're grateful for a home. So actually, again, the stigma attached to asylum seekers, you might think, oh, that's the worst of the worst. Not at all. They're lovely people and good as gold as tenants, actually, in our experience. So, it's like anything. If your properties are well managed, you're communicative with your tenants, you visit the properties regularly, do all the usual kind of property management stuff, you can work with pretty much any tenant group. We've even had experience in the past of emergency accommodation, literally the homeless end. And that does get quite a bit of wear and tear on your property. But if you're prepared for that and you're prepared to redecorate it basically every year, it can work really well. We got 30% more rent from operators doing that model. So you just factor it in. It's just part of the business, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
But lenders seem to get better with it, I think.
That leads me into what tenant profile is the best when you're doing this professional professional HMO?
I think, in terms of the profile, by speccing the properties a little bit higher, you can command a little bit more rent, which actually determines your tenant profile to many respects, because you're going to end up with the white collar workers rather than, say, the blue collar workers. You can attack any market. And what I mean by that, for anyone that might not be familiar with these phrases over in Sweden, white collar worker might be a higher paid professional like lawyers, accountants, solicitors, et cetera, et cetera. So the higher end of the work market. And the blue collar workers would be, might be supermarket workers or administration staff, just a slightly lower paid kind of worker demographic. And ultimately you could, spec your property for either of those. We spec ours for the higher of the two. So again, we can attract all of them if we want. But by very virtue of the fact we tend to be on the topper end of the rental spectrum, you know, we're really at the ceiling price of the rentals in the area. We're getting the white collar workers. We're getting the, you know, those kind of people, which, you know, yeah, might be slightly more respectable in property, you don't know. Or they might be, you know, you could argue the other way. It could be more difficult because they're used to higher standards elsewhere. So they could be more, cause you more management headaches. You know, they're, you know, expecting the Ritz Hotel or something. So I think, you know, we work sort of with a mix of those two demographics on the professional end of the spectrum, and that seems to work well.
Okay, so this question is from a listener. What are all the legal documents required to provide a tenant once contracts are signed?
Oh, crikey, you're putting me on the spot now. Do I look like my lettings administrator? Do I look like my operations manager? No. But I do know most of them, obviously. Obviously, you've got your contract, you know, your AST contract. We call that an AST, an assured short hold contract in the UK. That's usually a minimum of 6 months, or deemed to be legally minimum of 6 months. And that has to have all the details of your deposit in there. You're only allowed now up to 5 weeks rental deposit for renting to tenants in the UK. It used to be, actually, I think it used to be no limit. It was just
no limit.
And we used to take 6 weeks actually, because it was a month and a half. Seemed like a good number. We never had a problem with that. But they reduced that to 5 weeks, which is fine. It's a bit more exposure as a landlord. If someone doesn't pay 1 month's rent and then trashes your house, well, you're not covered. You're 5 weeks rent, you know. You're not covered. So I think that's a bit harsh. I wasn't appreciative of that change the last couple of years, I must say, but it is what it is. You must also do your deposit protection certificates, or DPC for short. That's where a tenant, you place their deposit in a government registered scheme, something like My Deposits has a scheme. There's another DPC scheme. I think there's a handful of schemes now that are kind of insurance. You can either deposit the actual cash with them, or you can do an insurance-based scheme where you keep the cash and you pay about 20 or 30 quid, and they register an insurance against your deposit. That's one of the key documents. In recent months, they've got a lot more strict on what this tenant pack is, and it must be given to the tenant before they move into the property. And it covers all things like the certification for the property. It covers EPCs, gas safety certificates, electrical certificates, HMO license copies, and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, that's not necessarily a full, complete list, but it'll give you an idea of probably most of the documents that would be in there. It's got a lot more rigorous, and I think for a good thing. You know, I have no problem with regulation. It's good to quickly touch upon that, if I may. You know, regulation is good because it means the ethical, hardworking operators will do well. It weeds out the crap. You know, no one wants dodgy, illegal landlords that don't keep their properties up to the right standard. It's not fair on tenants. It's not fair they're making money out of crappy products. So I'm for good, solid regulation. Reducing deposit levels, I don't agree with that. That's not regulation. That's just a change in, you know, more favoritism towards protecting tenants than landlords. I think landlords need protecting as well. You know, we get terrible tenants not paying, and I think that we're trying to run a business here, and we need protection as well. So I don't think that's necessarily fair change. And there, you know, there's some tax changes I don't agree with. Things like Section 24 tax, taxing you in the UK, that came in a couple of years ago, and it's been tiered up to this year, where you're now not able to deduct your mortgage interest rate off your gross revenue. So it makes you're paying profits. You're paying tax on your revenue, not your profit. Well, how ridiculous is that? How many businesses in the world are taxed on their revenue, not their profit? Absolutely crazy. But you know, they're just trying to shift us all into limited company structures and different setups. Then they'll tax us hard in there. Like the budget came out last week, went up to 25% corporation tax for bigger earners in corporations. So, you know, hopefully that won't affect the property investors too much, especially if you keep each property in its own limited company. You won't get up to the thresholds, the 250,000 thresholds to hit those higher corporation tax bands. But you get my point. They'll all push us into limited companies. They'll all just tax us there in a couple of years.
Yeah, they will.
It's a game of cat and mouse, isn't it, with the tax? Right? Good fun. Good fun.
So do you have a target of ROIs or RUI, or return on investment, when you're doing your due diligence?
No.
So So
Was
don't
that
you?
right?
Yeah, that was a new one.
Yeah, no, I thought you were expecting like I'm really detailed. Oh, I need exactly 15% ROI. I'm not going near the deal. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
The straight answer is you need a good ROI. Obviously, when we're talking HMOs and we're talking proper development, maybe commercial to residential conversions. If anyone's looking into that, I mentor people getting into those more advanced development strategies. So, hook up with me on nicholaswallwork.com with the mentorship options for doing that. For those kind of options, it's not just about the ROI on your money. A lot of deals, you can get all your money back out. So it could be infinite ROI. If you're doing enough development that warrants enough uplift, you potentially can refinance at the end and pull all your money out at the end. Used to be called a no money down deal. Now we sort of call it maybe, that's got a bad stigma in the industry now, isn't it? No money down deals. Oh, that's bad. They still exist. It's just a different way of phrasing it. Could be a no money left in deal. It could be a JV where you're not using your own money. That's a no money down deal, isn't it? So, let's not use the stigma terms. Let's just use the real terms. Ultimately, there's more to a deal than the ROI. So what I mean by that is, what's the capital value increase? You might be looking at ROI on the rental income. Well, that's great, but that's not everything. I want to look at, is there a capital uplift in my development? Have I added value in the development? I might have a rubbish ROI. I might not rent out for very much, but I've added £1 million worth of value. So if I sell it, I guess you're talking about ROI on the sale. So, are you selling? Are you renting? Are you build to rent? I'm a build to rent developer. I keep 90% of what we do in Red Brick, myself and my business partner in Red Brick. And the reason we do that is that we're talking long-term growth. The rental income makes it. The building we just finished in Newbury makes just under £500,000 worth of rental income each year, gross rental income.
Oh, wow.
And the mortgage is about 300,000. So, we're making, don't quote me on those figures, by the way. That's like, I've got that in a spreadsheet in my A&L sheet. That's on there. I could tell you exactly. But, then you're making a couple £100,000 sort of gross profit from a site. That means the initial ROI might be kind of irrelevant, because I'm looking at a 10, 20-year ROI. Again, I'm a bit of initially on the deal, I do my back of a fag packet calculation. Is it a good, am I going to get a good uplift? In terms of the uplift on development, I want to see, at least 20% really, upwards, and ideally, 30 or 40% if possible, but at least 20% return on your capital invested as a developer. And I guess the sort of yields you're talking for HMOs, you're upwards of 10% often, aren't you? You can be up as high as 20% some deals. So really depends on the deal. I wouldn't rule any deal out as long as it's reasonable ROI, sort of 8, 9, 10% above. But there might be a different play there. So that's the reason I said no.
Okay. Top 3 tenant finding tips. This is also from a listener.
Tenant finding tips?
Yeah.
Okay. We have a lot of room rental portals in the UK. We use spareroom.co.uk. We use Open Rent, is like an online lettings agency. So that they then feed that out to places like Rightmove, Zoopla, Prime Location. So we get there, two of the biggest portals. I think they put out on Gumtree as well. I think that's one tip. That's kind of obvious, right? I think most people do that. I'm not reinventing the wheel there. I'll try and make these tips a bit more kind of practical. Good tip would be present your property in the best way. Have really good written copy. Get really good professional photographs taken if you can. We're now doing virtual tours. So I presented a virtual tour last week with our film crew, and I went through each room. I started at the front door of the property, said, right, let me show you room 1, and went through the front door, walked up to room 1, opened the door. They then did all the incidental shots of room 1, back to me in the corridor. Let's go and look in the communal areas. And then there's all the communal areas. And then we've cut, on this room, it was a 5-bed HMO, one of the smallest I've ever done, but it was bought cheap, renovated cheap, makes a great ROI. I normally do 6 or above. And then you have one video for each room. So you just have room 1 and all the communal areas in one video. So on that room 1 advert, when that room comes available now or in the future, we make sure that video attracts people. You know, it's informative. They can see where in the house the room's located. They can see the room, the communal areas, the corridors, the front of the house. We do incidentals, the front of the house, the garden, everything like that. So, you know, present your property in the best possible light, really. And tenant finding tips, you know, a lot of these sites have wanted ads, you know, wanted rooms. Go on there and hit those up, you know, send a templated message, a little bit tweaked to make it personal, if you want to attract tenants even quicker. But, you know, I think it's more about the way you're presenting it, the copy ad. You know, if you want to offer 2 weeks rent free, that's a great way of attracting tenants. You know, 2 weeks rent free if you take it tomorrow. If you take it from this Friday, you get 2 weeks rent free. Well, not many people can move within a few days. No. If they can move within a few days, they get 2 weeks rent free. If they can't, they're still coming to the property and they can't move for 2 weeks. Well, they're only going to get maybe a week's rent free. So it's not just 2 weeks from the day you move in. Otherwise, you're like, oh, well, wait 2 weeks for the tenant to move in, then another 2 weeks rent. You know, you're losing too much. Those incentives, like if you can get someone in today or tomorrow or the day after, you know, you've got to do your rent checks and stuff and your contracts. So you can get in the next few days, we'll give you 2 weeks rent free. Because, you know, if the room's vacant at that point, you need someone in. It could easily take 2 weeks to fill without an incentive anyway, in which case, if someone can move quick and move in today, give them a rent-free period. So we offer that incentive often. That seems to work really well. Again, don't want anyone else to do this. Please don't take this advice. Otherwise, everyone will be offering 2 weeks rent-free and I won't rent anything anymore. But, you know, it's what it is. I'm only kidding. Go for it. Give it a try.
Sorry, Nicholas. Everyone's going to do it.
I should stop talking. Go and buy the book. On Amazon and anywhere books are sold.
Yes.
More golden nuggets like that, Nana.
So what HMO do you think is the best? The smaller ones or the big ones?
Oh, without doubt, the big ones.
Okay.
They just make
How
so
come?
much more cash flow. You know, the more rooms you get after the first 3 to 4 rooms, you know, it will depend on the property, the rent in that area, blah, 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 the cost of the property, the deposit. After the first 3 or 4 rooms, you're covering your bills and your mortgage each month. Then the 5th room is your all profit, you know, assuming everything's fully let, obviously. So it's all your profit. 6th room's all your profit. You know, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th rooms won't be all profit because you'll have to spend more on the house. But, you know, let's say if you've got a 10-bed HMO, you're in profit from probably room 5. So you've got 5 rooms of profit. So, you know, it's not a linear thing, you know, as you're buying property, you know, more expensive property is only, you know, it goes like this, it goes in exponential. You know, the more you spend on the property at this level, the more the income is, because those extra rooms just give you extra cash flow. You know, as you get bigger, you've got increased regulation, you've got increased space standards for the kitchens, the worktops need to have enough worktop, need to be enough ovens and cookers and appliances to cater for the higher number of occupants. The fire safety standards are stricter if it's over 3 stories. The fire escape routes, you need mains wired commercial grade fire alarms and things like this. So, you know, with a bigger HMO comes increased regulation, which quite rightly so is there to protect your tenants. And I want to sleep at night. I want my properties built to the highest possible standard. We spec up our 5-bed HMO to the same spec as a 10-bed HMO because I want to sleep at night. You know, I've got mains, panel, fire alarms, everything to the top spec. But so, for me, that's a 20-year investment that will protect me and my tenants. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a few kind of tips. But
so what's
really important point. You know, I know I go on a bit, don't we? We're going to struggle to keep this to an hour, but you know, the bigger ones are easier to finance and get your money back out of, because the more work you do to create what is a dedicated HMO rather than just a converted house. You know, 5-6-bedders are converted houses. You might add a couple of en suites, you might refresh it, but the amount of development work needed to do those is less than, say, a 10-bed HMO that might need more work. You know, that 10-bed HMO is less likely to be considered by the lender to be going back to a single family home. Whereas a 5 or 6-bedder, they might go, well, that's too much like a single family home and could easily be converted back to one. It's not as dedicated an HMO as a large HMO. So for lending, you can get more flexibility on the bigger ones.
Okay. And coming back to the bigger one, what is the biggest one that you have, the HMO?
I guess it depends on what, if you'd consider
how many rooms.
How many rooms? Yeah, I mean, we've got one of our first ones actually. It's got 24 rooms in it.
Oh, wow.
It's one purchase. It was an office. We bought this, crikey, when did we buy this? Would have been back in about 2010, I think, something like that. But it's two large detached houses. They have integral flats down in the basement. We bought it as one building. We've subsequently put HMO licenses on two halves. So you could argue it's two HMOs, two 12-bedders, but it's bought as one, developed as one, let out as one, but it's nicely segregated. So the flats on each have, I think, 3 rooms in. Then each of the HMOs above have 9 rooms in. They have a kitchen in there, kitchen in the basement flats. So it's not as big as it sounds. So it's split up and there's some segregation. Doesn't feel as big. And it was one of these Victorian, I think it was Victorian house, but really big ceilings, double height ceilings, lovely cornicing. So you've got voluminous rooms, which makes it feel really, really high end as well. And we're just purchasing one in Hampshire, which is a care home that we're converting. We're hoping that's going to have up to, we think, well, subject to planning, up to 56 rooms in it in one block. So
that leads me into my following question. Do you have more turnover in the bigger ones compared to the smaller ones?
Yeah, I mean, by very nature of the fact you have more tenants, you have more turnover. Turnover is just the rent, isn't it? The rent, the gross rent. If you mean profit, is that perhaps what you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, but yes to both is the answer. Turnover is rent. So if you have another room, you're going to get more rent. So the turnover is always more with more rooms. If you're talking profit levels, I believe you get more profitable the bigger you get, provided you can maintain the standard and you're still getting the same rents from your tenants. And they're designed in a way that doesn't make someone feel like they're moving into a 56-bed HMO. Now that will be designed, as a series of individual flats within the building. So you're not like 56 people sharing one kitchen. There'll be 7 or 8 kitchens in that property, and there'll be multiple fire doors. We might even block up certain corridors to segregate sections of the building. So to us, it's a 56-bed HMO, but actually it's a commercial care home conversion back to maybe a number of flats all let out as an HMO basis. But we'll probably go for sui generis planning for the building as a whole, as an HMO, to keep the conversion cost down, building control cost down, actually doing this kind of it gets expensive in a conversion like that, where you end up separating the flats because you have to do, fire separation, you have to do acoustic separation. There's all these extra levels that you need to do. But if you can get sui generis HMO, it's treated as a house share. You don't have to separate the rooms to the same standard as if you were separating 2 new build flats. In terms of, it's still completely safe because you have the highest possible fire safety standards, but you don't need the acoustic between the walls to be as good as if 2 separate flats, 2 new build flats. So that's a trick. You can get bigger HMOs, and you've got people sharing in one residential address. You don't have to separate as to a higher standard of kind of acoustics and noise and all that kind of stuff. And it's acceptable because people accept they're in a house share. They don't expect it to be the same as a block of flats where their neighbour's really noisy. They wouldn't accept that. But in an HMO, living with people, you're a community. You don't expect the same standard as you might if you were living in your neighbour in the neighbouring flat in a block of flats was noisy. So
yeah, that's true. So what should we be looking for when buying another existing HMO from a landlord?
Good question. I'd always ask the question, why are they selling the HMO? And if they're selling it vacant, why are they selling it vacant? What's the problem? Does it need upgrading? Does the fuse board need upgrading? There's, constant regulations changing. Recent regulations in the last couple of years mean a lot of fuse boards need upgrading to kind of metal ones. They were plastic, and in every area there's upgrades. Do they have the right fire doors? Do they have the right fire alarm system? Maybe they've had an inspection from the HMO department, that says, well, crikey, within, they give you usually a time scale to do upgrades, the HMO licensing department, and the environmental health in the local council. We need you to upgrade your fire alarm. You need to do it within 6 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
There are a load of upgrades that need doing that you're not aware of. So get a copy of the HMO license, possibly contact the local council to say, are you aware of any defects in this property that need addressing? I'm looking to buy it. And obviously do the viewing of the property. What does it look like? Is it tatty? What's the occupancy like? Perhaps ask to see the accounts for that property from the current owner. Has it been full? Are they struggling to fill it? Is it in a bad area that's not quite working? Are the neighbours a nightmare? Is it in a dodgy area that you're not quite sure of? So I think, when I'm buying, and I don't usually buy existing HMOs, although I have done, the opportunity can be that it's run down and needs upgrading. That can be the opportunity, right? So that's not something off necessarily, that you could go in and go, oh, brilliant, I can, knock a new fire alarm in and give it a lick of paint. Maybe the previous owner was struggling, using all the rent to fund his lifestyle, can't afford it, £5 to spend on the property. You can come in, spend that £5 and start making the rents back again. So that can be the opportunity. It shouldn't necessarily put you off, but it's something to definitely be aware of and going, when you're researching, do a lot of due diligence on the property, the location, why is he selling, and contact the council for any issues they've got with the license, and definitely see a copy of the license.
Yeah, good answers there, Nicholas. Why now I'm going to come into valuation. So this is also from listeners. Why does often HMO get a commercial valuation?
Well, there's this switchover between bricks and mortar valuation and commercial valuation. As you get more income on an investment, the bigger HMOs, the bigger they get, the more likely you are to be able to argue with the bank, convince them that you can get a commercial investment valuation. And it's really important. Go and buy my book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, guys. Joking aside, there's a really good chapter on valuations, Nana.
Yes.
I'm going to dig it up. I think it's chapter 7. Chapter 7, Understanding Property Valuations.
Yes.
Get that in there. Now, this covers it. I know you've read the book, so you've seen that. And this will go into a lot more detail than I can on this call. Understanding how to value on a commercial valuation is something I always teach my mentee clients when I'm mentoring them. They don't understand commercial valuations. They can't begin to get into serious property investing. I'm talking HMOs, I'm talking commercial to residential conversions and slightly bigger stuff. If you want to progress your career, you can't just usually do it in this day and age on just buy-to-lets. Single buy-to-lets, single occupancy buy-to-lets. They're great if you want to store your money in them and get a good return, better than the bank, but you're not going to light the world on fire in terms of your returns, where you can be a bit more hands-on with HMOs and commercial resi conversions. So commercial valuations are done by, taking the income, knocking a chunk off that to take it from the gross income to the net income. That might be anything from 15 to 25%. And that knock off from the gross rents is to account for voids, maintenance, management, utilities, stamp duty costs. If someone was coming to buy this property, they're valuing it as if someone was buying it. So that needs to come off too. So they calculate stamp duty and other costs. When you've got that net rent figure, that net rent estimated figure, you apply a yield to it. So in our area around sort of the Thames Valley of the UK, Reading, Newbury, all this sort of Thames Valley area, they will apply about a 6.5%, maybe a 7% if you're unlucky, yield. So by applying that yield, that number you get is your end value. It's your net rent, which is roughly, let's say for argument's sake, take 20% off your gross rent, 20%, then apply a yield, which is like taking that net rent, divide it by the percentage. So 6.5% would be divided by 0.065. That gives you your commercial valuation figure. Now that figure might be substantially higher than the bricks and mortar value. Yeah. If it is, you want to try and persuade a lender to value it off that. That's how you're going to pull more of your money back out, because 75% loan at the end on 100 grand, you've got 75 grand mortgage. 75% off 80 grand, is, I can't calculate that in my head. Sorry, I'm not a maths genius, but it's less. It means you get a smaller mortgage at the end, which means more of your money needs to stay in. So yeah, commercial valuation is really important to understand. It's a very simple concept. The yield and the deduction figures will come from your local valuer. They're the figures that they decide. So that's where a valuer gets to decide what it's worth on an investment value. It's not just the income. It's like, how good's the property? How good's the location? How strong are the rents in that area? And that will determine the yield that he applies. And some valuers can be persuaded, to value a bit stronger if you when you want to meet them, you want to give them a pack of comparables as well. You want to show your calculations, show the quality, and sell your site when they get there. Look how nice it is. We've spent all this money on this. We've got the top of a grade fire alarm, fire doors. Everything's built to a very high specification. Convince them to give you a good yield. That's a lower yield. Lower the yield, the higher the end valuation in that calculation. But I say the calculations in the book, a load of information on that and bricks and mortar valuation. So understanding the difference is critical.
And now I'm going to come into the bricks and mortar. How do you avoid getting bricks and mortar valuation? I know you have it in the book, but the listeners have sent me questions, so I guess they want to.
No, I'm happy to answer it. I'm not shoehorning people off into the old book, but make sure you go and buy the book. It's just a joke, I don't make any money from the book. Genuinely, the reason I pitched this book, but I don't pitch it very hard, is because I want to help people. It's all in there. This is like free.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book. It is.
And if people want to mentor with me, I give them a book free anyway, or I refund the cost of the book. So the reason I give it is because I want people to learn. I want people to have really good in-depth knowledge for as good as low money as it costs. So the bricks and mortar valuation, thank you for picking me up on that. I wasn't clear on that. That's essentially where you'll do a comparable method of valuation. That's where, in simple terms, you'll look at 5 properties in the same street that are as close as possible to yours. What did they last sell for? What was the value of those when they sold? Are they the same layout? Are they the same standard as yours? And you're making a best guess as to what yours would be. If you've got 5 identical properties in a row of terraced houses in England, and none of them have got an extension, they're all the same. They're all, built 10 years ago, so they're all reasonably modern. 5 out of the 6 sold for within £2,000 of £200,000. What's yours worth? It's not rocket science, is it? It's worth a couple hundred grand.
Yeah,
it's worth the same, unless it's got something that stand out. Maybe it's the end of terrace. The others are in the terrace, so maybe it's worth 205 grand, 210 grand because it's the end of terrace. Maybe it's got a big extension on the back that might stick another 10, 20 grand on the value, or 30 grand. So you look at very similar properties in very similar areas, close to the areas you can, and you're making a best guess. That's all estate agents do. When you go get a free evaluation from an estate agent, that's all they do. Most estate agents aren't trained RICS, that's RICS, RICS chartered surveyors. They are not trained surveyors. They are usually young people coming into the industry, learning on the job, giving a best guess valuation. And you know what they do half the time? They say, what do you want for it? So they put it on the owner, don't they, estate agents? So what are you expecting to get from it? So they're getting a clue as to how they should value it from the owner. So they want to hit the owner's expectations as well. So be very careful getting estate agents valuations. They're 90% of the time not worth the paper they're printed on. If you're an intelligent person, you can do a comparable bricks and mortar valuation on your own. Most people have got an idea of what their own house is worth, haven't they? And there's a reason for that. It's because they look around the area, they keep an eye on it and go, well, mine's probably worth about the same. Next door neighbours sold for this a couple of years ago. So it's just the same, it's comparable. Just do a bit of research and come up with a figure out of thin air.
So why do you think people prefer getting a bricks and mortar valuation then?
How do you mean they prefer it?
Yeah, because some that we have been told that they want to have bricks and mortar because they can change it back to, like you mentioned before, a family home.
I think sometimes for the smaller HMOs, the bricks and mortar valuation can be stronger. So this depends on the area. If you're in London, the bricks and mortar valuation will almost certainly be higher than the investment valuation, right? So depending on where you're based, the asset values, the capital values of the property, one or the other might be higher. So it's not necessarily you always go for the investment value. That's not always going to go with the best end value for you. So understanding both and understanding, those two valuations. Sometimes valuers, when you do bigger stuff, and as I've touched on earlier, I'm mentoring a client at the moment that's doing a commercial to residential conversion in Hampshire, 30,000 square foot, and it's going to be 44 apartments, 106,
Oh, wow.
106 lettable rooms if it was done on an HMO basis, which we are provisioning for as one exit option. The bricks and mortar valuation, because it's a really nice area, is actually very strong. You know, it's almost the same as the investment value. And so that's good for the client because it means they've got two exit options. They could sell it quite easily for the bricks and mortar valuation. They could refinance it on either valuation. Now, you know, I don't want to get too complicated, but when you're looking at mortgage, they also look obviously at the rent coverage ratios. It's not just about the value. They look at that kind of stuff as well. So there's more to it than meets the eye, but ultimately, you know, you want to be aware of both. You want to know how to roughly calculate both, and then you can plan your exit strategy when doing so.
Okay. What to look for in a management agent that qualifies to manage your HMO?
Well, we have our own management letting agency, so that helps. Not for clients. I don't want any clients. I don't want any clients coming to me to manage their HMOs because it's a lot of work. We don't do that. You know, we don't do it. We manage our own portfolio and a handful of investors where we've sold properties and we've retained the management to help them out. You know, I wouldn't want that business. That's hard business to be in. It's okay managing your own stock because you can control it. You can be on the ball. You can keep the standards high. But giving it to an agent, I think, you know, you always run the risk of them not caring as much as you, not quite doing as much, not doing as many checks. So I think the key thing to look out for is, do they run a successful HMO management business already? You know, do they deal with a number of HMOs? Can you get a referral from those landlords, perhaps? And can you get an idea of the occupancy rates and voids and things like that for their HMOs? On the flip side, you might not want to go with someone that does all HMOs in one area, because actually, if you're just one cog in the wheel of a portfolio of 100 HMOs in one town, well, crikey, are they going to put the tenants to yours first or their best landlord first? So I would say pick an agent that's got a handful of HMOs. They're good at managing them. They understand them. They understand the regulations, the increased regulation. You know, HMO checks come up every year or two. Council want to come and inspect. You get all these kind of things, you know, increased safety standards, the fire alarms need checking, the electrical certs, you know, all that stuff needs doing. Make sure they know I've got enough experience and they do manage them and they're happy to manage them. Some people aren't because they don't understand it. It is higher risk for an agent because there's higher regulation. So just make sure you're dealing with people that know what they're doing, potentially not too overexpose themselves with a large portfolio where you become, you know, small pea in the pod rather than one of a handful of HMO landlords that they manage on your behalf.
Are there some specific question they should ask?
Yeah, I mean, how many HMOs do you manage? A good question. Are you comfortable with all of the increased regulation of HMOs? How many staff do you have? And do you conduct viewings outside of office hours? You know, a lot of HMO professional tenants will want viewings in the evenings or early evening, like 6, 7 o'clock after work. What are their hours of operation? Do they have good management software that can report to you on your voids, your occupancy, when people have handed their notice in? Have they got good software in-house to manage the portfolio properly? And could you get any referrals from existing HMO landlords that work with them, so you can get a referral to check how they're doing with their properties? Those would be a good handful of questions to ask.
Thank you for that. That's a good answer. So how much should a HMO agent take then?
I'm not the right person to ask that because I have my own agency. I charge myself nothing. But I don't think you'll get as good a deal as that. I think, you know, most management varies depending on how much management you get, but you're probably looking at least 10% with HMOs, up to 15 to 20%. I've heard some people charge for, you know, really, really full management. It depends where you are. London's obviously more expensive. Home counties and other areas can be cheaper. Again, it's probably quite area specific, to be honest. So difficult to answer that and give you a concrete answer. But just do your research and speak to all the agents that do it and make your own decision. Also, choose people you like working with. You know, you're going to be on the phone. You are still going to have to make decisions. Oh, you know, Nick, we've got a fridge freezer breakdown. Can we buy another one? You know, or we've got a leaky tap. Can we send someone in? Yeah, you know, you're still going to have to deal with the agent. They don't do everything for you. They're not going to make decisions for you. So you want to be dealing with people you like, you get on with, they've got good work ethic, trustworthy, good customer reviews on the agency. And when you go in, they're amenable and they pick up the phone when you call them. Because if they're not picking up the phone, you know, regularly when you call them or quickly, they're not doing that if tenants are calling, prospective tenants. So, you know, do a bit of research, suss them out, and pick someone that feels right in your gut.
Yeah. What's your take on leasing furniture or purchasing them? Which is better?
Purchasing.
Why?
Yeah. I think, you know, you can replace your, you know, if you damage leased furniture, you're going to damage it, aren't you? Firstly, you know, it's a bit like, do I rent a property and do a rent-to-rent strategy? You know, I'm sure you're aware of rent-to-rent. That's where you rent the whole house, maybe off one landlord, and you would sublet the rooms with their permission, and obviously increasing the space standards. You might need to put fire alarms in, fire doors. You need to check the property conforms. There's a rent-to-rent chapter in my book, by the way. So rent-to-rent is a really good strategy if you're you know, you've got time-rich, cash-poor, you're just getting into property. That can be a good way to get in. And I've done that. I did a few rent-to-rents in my early years. I still advocate it as a strategy, and I still teach it to my mentor clients, my mentorship clients that need that kind of strategy. They don't maybe have as much capital to get involved. Great way of getting involved. So yeah, I kind of went off the topic there. What was the question?
Yeah, if why is it better to
lease? Yeah, I don't know. I didn't even think leasing furniture was really a great option for rental property. I mean, it's going to get damaged over time, wear and tear. I'm not quite sure how that works. I mean, I know there's you know, there's package companies that come in and furnish the whole house for you. I know that you can lease furniture for show homes, and maybe when you're first letting it, you could lease some furniture for a short period of time to make it look really nice for the viewing. And when people have moved in, the furniture doesn't come with it, or some of the furniture doesn't come with it. So that could be an option, short-term lease of furniture, just to make it look really stunning with all the soft furnishings and cutlery and everything. You know, we provide a bed and a wardrobe, you know, a bed with a mattress and a wardrobe in our HMO rooms. Nothing more. We don't do, occasionally the odd chest of drawer, occasionally the odd desk, but that's not the norm, because we don't need to. They rent quickly without, and then you've got less furniture to go wrong. The wardrobes we try and build in, so they're solid, built in, mirrored doors to make the rooms look bigger. And, you know, just divan bed sets with storage under the bed. So you've got some extra storage there as well. You can buy those for 250 quid for a divan bed, which is just the kind of big square bases with storage and a mattress. They're cheap. They last a good few years. We always put a mattress protector on for each new tenant as well, because that, you know, gives a bit more longevity for your mattress. So yeah, I guess it's got its place. Not in long-term rentals, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. And are there any grants you can get running an HMO that you're aware of?
You're kidding me. Tell me where to sign. I mean, there's none that I'm aware of. So if you know of any, please let me know. I don't know everything. I'm not the oracle. I do my best. And I'm always learning. I think I'm always learning from my peers. I'm always learning from my colleagues and people on the industry. The internet's a wonderful place with places like Property Forum, people sharing information on that. I see stuff on there I've not learned before, you know. So I'm always learning. I'm not aware of any grants for HMOs specifically. I'm aware of various grants to do with sort of insulating your property. There are some sort of eco grants out there, so they're worth looking into if you're buying a new property and you want to upgrade the insulation. If you can get your, you know, at the end of the day, if you get your utility bills down, which, you know, the HMO landlord would almost certainly be paying themselves, then they're going to be saving money. So there are some grants for sort of home refurbishment and improvements. There are various schemes out there for eco energy. So the power technology can be financed and can pay itself back and be positive cash flow after, you know, a number of years. So I think there's lots of opportunities out there to get your bills down and your costs down. But specific grants, I'm not hugely familiar with. But it might be area specific again. So
so what type of commercial units uh, do you suggest it's the best to convert to HMO?
Now, it's a case-by-case basis, really. I mean, in the UK at the moment, we have some really good permitted development rights available to us that were put in a few years ago. And those have recently been extended last year in September. We've now got this Class E system, which encompasses sort of an umbrella system encompassing a number of the other smaller use classes. You're able to interchange between those use classes easier. You're allowed to convert from some of the more commercial buildings to residential more easily with a reduced planning process, which is great, you know, and you don't have to pay as expensive Section 106 payments, which is payments to the council to get bigger planning applications through. So offices are a great one. You know, we do a lot of office conversions because they're nice and easy. They usually have some internal partition walls that are very easy to rip out. You end up with big open spaces you can carve up how you want. Usually lots of windows and usually pretty uncontentious in terms of getting through the planning process. So we love office conversions. So do a lot of people, unfortunately. So it makes them, you know, not particularly cheap anymore. But they, you know, there's a bit of stock coming to the market with COVID. Again, one of the silver linings of this horrible COVID cloud is there is more stock in the UK coming to the market that is ripe for conversion. So that's, I'm kind of looking forward to making hay whilst the sun shines this summer, effectively, with some of that stock, recycling it back into the residential property market.
Yeah. So where do you see people fail most when doing HMO?
Well, it's almost always the regulations and the financing. You know, I think HMO financing is different to buy-to-let financing. They look more at the individual as well as just the property. Understanding the valuations that we talked about is really critical. They fall down on the valuation stage. They don't know, if they don't know what the value is going to be doing, how can they possibly influence it in a positive way, both with designing the product to influence it and also presenting it correctly in the most professional light to the valuer. So I guess the regulation as well can be a sticking point, what's needed. There's a lot of devil in the detail, you know, when it's, you know, fire, gas, electricity, you know, self-closers on the doors, intromescent strips around the doors, fire seals, what grade fire alarm do you need to use, how much work service do you need, the minimum room size requirements, how many bathrooms per, you know, number of occupants, how many toilets per occupant, you know, the list goes on. That's not to put people off. It's entirely achievable. Each council has, you know, in the UK anyway, and I can't speak for Sweden, but in the UK, you know, they have a huge list of requirements on each government's website. You can usually download that from the government's local council website, their HMO guidance. So it's all out there, it just needs to be learned. And, you know, part of my job mentoring clients getting into properties is to do exactly that, is to talk them through those regulations and help them out right from the beginning of financing a deal right through to the end. So, you know, it can be a minefield, and education is the key. And I harp back to education, jumping on the likes of Property Forum and all the other forums out there and learning the free low-hanging fruit in terms of education about HMOs. You know, buying everyone's books. I'm not going to pitch my book again, but, you know, joking aside, you know, go and buy everyone's books in the industry. You know, just get that free, cheap education, and then if you feel you're still ready for courses, make sure you research course providers to, you know, make sure they're reputable, do a good job, deliver good content that's worth paying for. Get your knowledge up, and then you take all the risk away. You know, knowledge is power. De-risk your investments.
Yeah. So I have this following question that many people are always talking about when we're talking about HMO. What should investor do not to be hit with paying council tax per room and not the whole building?
Well, this is a tricky one. There is a real grey area around it. I mean, some councils say ensuite rooms without kitchenettes in them will be council tax banded now. I know London is particularly strict on some of these things. Certainly areas in the UK can be. I mean, put it this way, if you've got a shower, washing facilities, and you've got cooking facilities, you're almost certainly going to get individually banded if they find out, because that's fully self-contained accommodation. That's the highest risk, setup. And unless you've got planning for fully self-contained studios, probably breaching your planning as well, not to mention that. So that's a risky area to get involved in. Some people might say if you've got cooking facilities but no washing facilities in the room, that might also be considered council tax banding. So it's really a grey area. I've seen a lot of chat on it online. I'm grateful that in the areas I operate, we've not been individually council tax banded yet, touch wood. So there is no one answer that fits all. I would say speak to your local council in informally. My name's John Smith. I'm thinking of buying an HMO in Newcastle. Can you tell me if you're banned council tax? Phone up anonymously. Don't tell them where you're buying one or what the address is, for goodness sake. They'll be like, oh, well, we'll give you a call in a couple of months. Do your research with the council direct. Look on all the forums locally, for local Facebook groups in that town. See what people are doing in those areas and try and assess the risk for yourself. If you're in any doubt, make sure you can cope with it if it happens, right?
Yes.
Make sure you've got the margin in the deal that you could swallow it. Okay, you're not going to make as much profit. Make sure it doesn't become negative cash flowing, because that would be a disaster. So, I think if you've got a 6-bed HMO and you've got 6 band-aid council taxes at the best part of 80, 90, 100 quid a month each, that's knocking 500 or 600 quid off your gross rent. If you're not making 500 or 600 quid gross rent, you shouldn't be doing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You should be making at least 1,000, 12, 14, 1,500 pounds gross rent on your HMO. So, it still will make you some good money. You might have to work a bit harder to keep it filled, keep the voids down, keep the standards up to maintain your profit levels. But, just be aware of it and do as much research as you can on that area before going into it. And if you get clobbered with it, you don't have to swallow it. There's not really a way around that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Comparing blocks of flats to HMO, which one is better and why?
Now, we convert a lot of conversions to flats. Up until recently, up until the end of March, literally a couple of weeks away, there is no minimum space standard for micro studios in a conversion. Now, unfortunately, there's the low lives of this world that have been developing too small units in these conversions. And that's why they've now brought in a minimum space standard to match the national space standard, which is 37 square meters for a studio 1-bed apartment. Regulations are a good thing. I believe there needed to be a space standard brought in. I personally think it's absolutely ridiculous they put it to 37 square meters. I think that's too big. You can easily create a well-spaced designed, nice studio for 20 to 25 square meters. That's what a lot of micro studio sites we've done have been done on, and they're brilliant. They're the next step up from a shared HMO bedroom. Would you rather live in a, the minimum standard for HMOs, I think 6.5 square meters or 6.51 square meters as an HMO bedroom. Well, how come that's allowed if, a single person living in a 25 square meter, fully self-contained luxury studio apartment? How is that different? I don't get it. I think they should have brought in a minimum space standard. Something like 20 square meters would have been appropriate for that use class. People need, there's no middle ground in property. It's either you're in an HMO or you're in your 1-bed flat now. Before, there was micro studios. There was the market of conversions where you could have another product on that ladder of affordability. That's why we've done so well with the micro studios, because we quality accommodation at an affordable price. We might be renting one of those apartments, say in our local town of Reading or Newbury, for £850 a month, all in. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, HMO room might be £600, £650 a month, all in. Our micro studio is £800, £850 a month, all in. 1-bed apartment, it's going to be £800 or £900 rent plus all the bills. £100 council tax, 50 quid water, gas, electric, broadband. They're well over £1,000, including all the bills. So we hit a really nice price point in the market to deliver something bigger than an HMO room. Someone wants to live in a self-contained studio, high quality. They've taken that away from the market. So I think they should have brought in a lower minimum space standard for conversions. yeah, and there is some lobbying hopefully going on in that basis. I'm certainly shouting about it wherever possible. They've cut out a really valuable segment of the private rented sector, affordable rents for young professionals. I think it's criminal, but there you go. Housing ministers, there's been however many, 12 in the last 10 years or something. Clearly, if you're watching, Mr. Housing Minister, you need to do a better job.
Yeah. Okay, I have two more questions, and then I have the fun part.
Go for
How
it.
do you beat your competition where there's a lot of HMOs?
Yeah, I mean, good question. I think to be fair, I think, go back over this podcast and listen to some of the points. I'll reiterate the top ones to answer this question, but, do the best possible standard, deliver the best spec for your apartments and your rooms. Have good communal space. I think with COVID, having some communal space would be more valuable now. Previously, we've not even had communal lounges in a number of our HMOs because the rooms are big enough. They're in town centre locations. They're almost, lived in like studio apartments. Good, small studio apartments. So maybe having a bit more outdoor space. Finding the right property in the first place at the right price allows you to beat your competition because you maybe spend more on renovating it and keeping it because you got a good deal in the first place. Being close to amenities and transport links. So again, it's about location, location, location. I know we all hear this a lot in property, but it really stands the test of time, unfortunately or fortunately. Marketing, getting your marketing to a higher standard than anyone else, having professional people come and take the photographs and do virtual tours. Market, I can never say enough, market yourself, feature all your ads on your portals, spend the money on the marketing, don't be cheap ass, don't go in there logging and refreshing it every day and missing a couple of days. You do need to refresh your ads regularly, but write exciting, good ad copy, good quality photos. When you combine all of that, good website maybe, have your own website with your properties on, go the extra mile that other people aren't doing, work with the best agents if you're using agents that by picking the right agent, that can differentiate you. There's lots of ways you can differentiate yourself, right from the property when you purchase it, right through to the way the property is presented and the way it's run. Don't forget, like the old adage, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your clients. In this example, keep the existing tenants you've got. There's your 20% of the market. The existing tenants you've already got, work hard to keep them and deliver a good service. Be quick to resolve problems in the property. Be communicative. Give them the courtesy of letting them know when you're coming in to do work. Keep the carpets cleaned, everything to a good standard. And, find the right people in the first place, picking tenants and be prepared to say no to certain tenants that you think might not match the house very well. You don't want to bring in someone that might not match the existing demographic in the house, and then people are unhappy. That's going to push other tenants out. Clamp down on noise issues and unruly tenants and things like that. Get them out quick, and come down on them like a ton of bricks as quick as you can. Let them know you're not going to have any nonsense. And all of that maintains a harmonious business.
Okay. So I have this last question now that I always ask my guests.
Go for it.
If you have unlimited funds, who would you have as a mentor?
Ooh, I love that one. Wow. Okay. Who would I have as a mentor? I'd have can I have multiple mentors?
Yeah. Okay. You're special.
For me, I'm mentored by my group of relationships I have in business, people I meet every day at shows, people that come up and talk to me after I've done a speaking event. They are my mentors because I'm always learning. Anyone that thinks that they're done and they know it all is absolutely rubbish. So, money is no object to getting a good mentor in some examples. So other than just good networking and communication and being open to chatting to anyone, I would choose people dependent on different strategies, right? So I would pick, inspirational leaders, past presidents and people like that to inspire me on leadership and how to inspire people to work with you and your team. I might have mentorship from that side of things. In terms of physical property, I'd be looking for some big property moguls, you know, like the Alan Sugars of this world. I know he's not people's favorite, Donald Trump's of this world. You know, he's a massive property developer, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Everyone knows him, the layperson, from being a president that was hated and loved all on the same page, you know. I'm indifferent to his styles. Obviously, I'm not an advocate of a lot of his methods in presidency, but some of them I absolutely loved because he treated it like a business. Didn't take any crap from people. You know, if it's not done right, you're out. You know, so certain business traits of his are what have made him successful. So I'd be interested to see how he develops property on such a big level, how he's gone bankrupt so many times and still successful. Not suggesting that's what I'm going to do, not for the slight of it, but do you know what I'm saying? He has got through some serious adversity to get to where he's got to, incredible adversity, and he's overcome that. How's he done that? You know, like Alan Sugar, he's a massive developer and investor in London. So I'd look for the big property guys, what they've done in property, and I'd love to see more of what they do. Really exciting. And then on a positivity kind of life coaching, you know, way, I have a great life coach I work with, a lady called Carolyn Bennett, really, really lovely lady. She's based in the UK, and I have life coaching. I had a session with her yesterday. You know, so she helped me maintain the tools that I use to become successful. I've not only researched this, but I've implemented it for the last 20 years. And I firmly believe success can be taught. I always do this little piece in my talks. One of the chapters in my book is about mindset, right? It's really about mindset. I am a massive believer in mindset. And ultimately, I think it can differentiate you in your life in success. You know, chapter 5 here is getting into the mindset of a successful investor. I'm just going to get on the screen if you can see that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all about kind of, you know, dream boards, affirmations, the law of attraction, positivity, the power of being grateful. All of these traits and techniques you can use to plumb into your business. And, you know, if there's anyone watching this that's not into property or has their own business, you can apply this success formula to any business, anything you do. You know, it makes a huge difference it's made a huge difference in my life. I've read a lot about it from a lot of successful people's books. You know, there's a pile of books on my desk and in my drawers and hundreds of successful people's books I've read, and they all have similar traits. And they very often apply these techniques. So I've made it my business to learn those techniques and employ them in my life. And I've done that for 20 years. 20 years ago, I knew I'd be a multimillionaire. I knew it. People thought I was mad. They were like, I was like, why aren't people taking me seriously? And I was like, well, because you're not a multimillionaire. Oh, right. But I know how to be one. Well, that's not good enough. So, you know, I had to take the action steps to do what I knew how to do. That's all I've done. This is not rocket science. Anyone can do it. You just need to learn how to do it and then take the action steps to do it. You've got to dream it. You've got to plan it. You've got to aim high, and then you've got to stay positive. Staying positive and grateful and respectful and helping as many people as you possibly can are ways that you can help society. And I like helping people in property get involved through Property Forum, my books, my work. That's why I'm so passionate in helping people for either no cost or low cost, or if you do want to get seriously going, the mentorship is a cost. But then at that point, you know, in someone's journey, they're ready for that, and I can make the most difference for them.
Okay.
So I'm very passionate about mindset in business and life and property, and that's an overriding thing that I kind of employ to keep things ticking along and keep the wheels on the bus.
Yeah. 3 books, and then I'm going to wrap it up and leave it to you.
Good man.
1 book to recommend to your children. It doesn't have to be property. 1 book for every investor. It doesn't have to be property, and then 1 property book.
Can you see anything coming here, Nana? I would recommend 1 book to all 3 demographics, and that is, joking aside, I think, you know, the reality is I love the Rich Dad Poor Dad books. The Rich Dad Poor Dad books are fantastic for investors. They've done a kids version, like Rich Dad Poor Dad for Kids, I think now. So I'm buying that for my kids. When they're at the right age, they'll appreciate it. My oldest is coming up to that age, I think. So it's about time I get that one for her. And that Rich Dad Poor Dad, you know, taught me passive income. It taught me investing in assets, not liabilities. Yes. It taught me that kind of fundamental investing, that fundamental financial intelligence to understand how the markets work, how inflation works, and all those basics. It's an education book on money, delivered through a really good story. I mean, a lot of people in property have read that book.
Yes,
it changed my life 20 years ago when I read it. I can't remember when it was written. It must have been written about that time, but hugely important book. So I'd go for the kids. I'd go for that one, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad for kids.
Kids, yeah.
I think it's a really good book. They're tricky to get kids into books that aren't, you know, stories or whatever it is related to school. For the investors, a further book which helped me was a chap called Tim Ferris. He wrote a book called The 4 Hour Workweek. He's now written Tools of Titans. He's written a number of books. He's a great guy. He does a great podcast. He does a great load of information. I'm learning from him every month about his tools and techniques. And again, it's passive income. It's building businesses, and he's built his brand over the last years off the success of what he's done. And I admire that and respect that, and I learn from that. So Tools of Titans is a good one. You know, it's a book where it's twice the size of that. You know, that's a thick book. His book is like that, you know, it's like double that. It's incredible. And he's interviewed, I know, hundreds of successful people, and he's trying to distill down the key elements of success. You know, he's an advocate of that idea that I've also had for 20 years, you know, so I really resonate with his work. He's a great one for the investors. And what was the last one, sorry?
Property book. But I guess I know which one.
I would recommend John Howard's property development books. He's one of my peers. We work on a lot of stuff, an excellent advocate, very experienced developer, more experienced than me. He's been in the game for years. And we get on really well. We do a lot of work together. We work on property summits. To anyone not familiar with that, jump on propertysummits.com. We do seminars. We are on Sky TV here in the UK, channel 191, Property TV there. We've got a new series of Property Summits, 4 episodes coming out over the next few weeks. So tune in. Look me up on YouTube, actually, Nicholas Wallwork, or Property Forum on YouTube, and we'll be putting it on there. That's probably a good place to put it. And on Property Summits YouTube, it's going on both those channels. It's going out on Sky TV on the TV. So if you've got a set-top box, you can tune in. But yeah, John's books are brilliant. And Paul Mahoney also does some great books. He's on the panel from Nova Financial. He's got a good book. If you haven't come across Paul, he does a lot of buy-to-let. So really good guy as well. And there's more. So I you've asked me to ask one. I could forever with, but they're two chaps in the industry that are highly ethical, and they're on a level where I'd be comfortable recommending them.
And John has been on the podcast, so you can listen to that episode as well. And I
hope he recommended my book. Did he?
I guess not.
I'm gonna have to go and have a word with him.
You have to go back to him.
Is it? Scratch John's book. Just go for Paul's. I recommend Paul's book. I'm only kidding, John. I'm only kidding if you watch it.
No, but this has been very nice and epic into speaking with you about property, HMO. And I think the listeners have taken on a lot of golden nuggets that you have given them.
I hope so. That's all I want to do is help as many people as I can. So
So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch? I know you mentioned the property TV, elevator, all of this, but like if they want to send you an email or follow you, or where?
You know what? I'm on all the usual places. We're not big on Twitter or Facebook. I'm not a fan of those platforms, but Instagram, I have a good account, and we kind of post inspirational quotes on there, either from other people, and we pull them out of my books and stuff as well. That's kind of, if you want a bit of an inspiration feed, log on to my Instagram. I think it's Nick_Wallwork. But actually connecting with me is just nicholaswallwork.com. And Google me on YouTube. Google my name on YouTube. Google my name on Amazon, and you'll find the books. I think YouTube's, we're just building that platform. We launched it in lockdown, and the positive feedback I'm getting from people that we're helping on there is brilliant. And I'm really grateful that I'm able to help so many people in such a short amount of time. So that channel is growing, which is great. And that means I can help more people. So please log on to the YouTube and subscribe to that. Love to hear your comments and questions on there. I try and jump on as much of the comments and questions personally as I can. So if you've got comments and questions, jump on one of our YouTube videos, ping me an email on nicholaswallwork.com. And if you're interested in mentoring, nicholaswallwork.com, there's a mentorship link. I'd love to hear from you. We have an informal chat. There's a little taster call you can book on there, and see if I can help you on your own journey.
Yes. Thank you, Nicholas. So there you have it. Don't be stressed. Invest, people.
Invest. Be happy. And you've got to love it. You've got to enjoy what you do. That's the most important thing.
Yes. Bye.
Thanks, Nana.